I heard of it, then I was awesome.
All right, everybody, how's it going? That's kind of the response I expected, considering what we've dealt with in the last week here in the Houston area. Well, the person speaking, it was Mike. Mike wants me to say that I am Joe Thompson, the chapter president. The chapter president who now has electricity and water. So I was able to shower.
Thank you.
I'm sure all of you appreciate that. No, I saved my son last night. So I know a lot of us in the Houston area are still feeling the effects of Hurricane Beryl. I was talking with some of y'all. I think I'm very envious of one of our chapter members, Scott. I'm gonna get a nice little setup so I can build a house. All right, got solar panel. You know, so way to go, Scott. That's the way of the future right there. So I dealt with the generator for the first time in my life this last week. Kind of convinced me I need to get something. But a lot of people in my area still don't have electricity, and some of them still don't have water. And I live up in the Conroe, Cleveland area. So anyway, what Mike?
West Virginia.
West Virginia. Yeah. All right, West Virginia. But anyway, at least for the next hour and a half, 2 hours, we can forget about that and talk a little baseball. And now, of course, we all know it's All-Star Week, right? And the home run derby's going on right now. Any predictions for the night? Anybody going with Pete Alonso?
Yeah, Maldonado.
For the home run derby?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Maldonado.
Maldonado, that's right.
See you in it?
Huh?
See you in it?
I don't know. He could probably bunt one. I mean, anybody have a prediction for who might win tonight? Nobody cares? No?
I'm going to die for the best. Go through a wild time.
Pete Alonso.
Yeah, lots.
So no Bobby Wood Jr. fans? No?
He's not going to.
He's not going to win?
No.
Bobby Wood Jr. Mike, believe it or not, there are other teams in baseball besides the Astros.
Gunner Henderson.
Gunnar Henderson. Right. Okay.
Who's in the home run derby? I didn't miss that.
You know, I actually was looking on that on my phone, and I heard Pete Alonso, if he wins, he ties with Griffey. This will be his third title or something like that. But we'll see. Anybody watching the All-Star game tomorrow night? Anybody? Okay.
At least for 2 minutes.
At least for the first few minutes, right? Anybody upset Renell Blanco's not on the staff?
Yes.
Yeah, I want him to rest.
Huh?
I want him to rest. He needs rest.
Anybody upset Altuve's not going to the game?
No.
Okay. So what is this, 3 or 4 years in a row that Altuve's been voted and he's not going? 3 years in a row? Okay. All right. So, well, you know, I've always been a big fan of the All-Star game, so I'll watch it. So we'll see how it goes. Last time we met in person here was what? May?
Yeah.
And the Astros weren't doing too well.
Yeah.
No.
They weren't doing too well at all. Anybody surprised by what they've done since we last met?
No.
They're 1 game out of first. Anybody shocked by that?
No.
So I'm going to ask the group: are the Astros going to repeat as AL West champs?
Yes.
Yes,
You think so?
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes, that does.
In that division?
As Rocky would say, absolutely.
Absolutely. And as Ben Verlander said, the Astros are inevitable. Right? The Astros are inevitable. So yeah, I kind of agree. I think we kind of found our mojo, and we don't even have all of our pitchers. You know?
No. Yeah, McCullers will be back.
Okay, right.
Mike, I'm glad you brought that up. Will McCullers ever pitch for the Astros again?
Oh.
It's inevitable. I love McCullers Jr., but I think his career is just the injury thing.
Bad side.
him and Forrest,
Training camp.
break, right?
Been on board, being there. More up with some.
You were never go.
Okay.
Make it or property.
Are we expecting Luis Garcia to come back?
Yes.
Yes.
Right extra.
Luis Garcia.
Yes.
Is he gonna do a half rock the baby, or he just can't do that?
I've never been.
He can't rock the baby anymore. All right, so I think the Astros are kind of set up, at least to get in and get to the ALDS, but we'll kind of see how it goes.
Several ways.
Oh, yeah, and Tucker. Yeah, I hurt my, what is it, ankle or foot, shin?
And
Maybe he'll be back this weekend. That was what, a month ago? So, they're on the radio, they were talking about the Astros and injuries, so, I don't know. We'll kind of see. Anyway, before I get any further off tangent here, I'd like to welcome all of you, even our visitors, for the first time. We had Hunter Hampton. Is Hunter Hampton here? We have one new member this month. Hunter Hampton from Nacogdoches. So I would also like to recognize the visitors. Whoever, if you're here the first time, welcome. Maybe you win a trivia contest, you know, or previous trivia contest winners. So if you're here, if this is your first time, introduce yourself, or Lou, go ahead, introduce our visitor.
Yeah, this is my brother Tom. Tom and I have, he's been my landlord for the last 8 days. Yeah, since I don't have power. And he might be for the next 8 days until they get power for our house in Kenwood.
well, thanks for that.
I'm saying that's on the northwest side of town. Fortunately, him and his wife Patty are very generous in that regard. Family, I love them. So I said, Tom, let's go see, let's go to the meeting, and then here we are. And of course, he loves baseball like I do.
Phillies fan?
Oh, yeah.
Like Liv? Okay.
About those Phillies, they lost 18-3 to the A's yesterday.
They lost 18-3 to the A's.
The best.
Wow.
Yeah.
So long as
You know, our division is a little weird. I mean, wasn't it just the Angels that just swept the Mariners? Or something like that? Didn't that just happen over the weekend? I mean, we just, and the A's do this A's thing every once in a while, where they beat somebody like the Phillies 18-3. So who knows what's going on? So, but, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, younger brother, older brother?
Younger.
I'm younger, but he's better looking.
There you go.
Richard, yeah.
Oh, he's Richard. Okay. But he's got the power right now, literally.
He's literally.
He's literally got the power. So, all right, well, welcome. Okay. Everybody else I recognize? Okay. Okay. Just a couple of things. For those of you, announcement, we're not going to have a meeting next month. Okay, we have 2 special events as a chapter. All right. The first special event is SABR 52 in Minneapolis. How many of you are going? Bob, I know you're going to Minneapolis. All right. Sam, are you going? No? Okay. All right.
23, I'm broke.
Who's all going in here? Gloria? Scott?
Lucha and Phyllis.
Lucha and Phyllis? Mike, are you going? You talked about it.
I don't know yet.
Mike might be going to Minneapolis, okay? Herb's going to Minneapolis. I'm going to Minneapolis. Lou, you're going to Minneapolis? It's a lot cooler up there than it is down here. Anybody else? Chris does. No? Patrick, are you going to Minneapolis? No? Okay. All right. I'm leaving on the 6th. One of our chapter members, Maxwell Cates, and Mike Vance, they've set us up with a chapter dinner, I believe on Saturday night. I think we're also going to have one on that first night we get there. So all of us will have like 2 get-togethers as a chapter. It's from the 7th through the 12th, 7th through the 11th of August.
So you're going on the 6th?
I'm leaving on the 6th. Right. So, okay. So, and at the end of the month, we're going to have our first ever chapter outing at Whataburger Field in Corpus Christi. Okay, so I set this up with the people with the hooks, and it's $68. It's kind of like the setup we got with the Space Cowboys. You get to sit in the nice air condition, you get a buffet, and you get to watch a great game in a great park. Okay, and if you've never been to Whataburger Field, it's really kind of a beautiful setting. All right. And on top of that, there's a bonus. We get to play the AA Dodgers. All right. So anytime an Astros team can beat the Dodgers, whatever level it is, that's a great thing. It'll be the Tulsa Driller. Okay. So if you want to go, please see me. Some of you, many of you who have said you wanted to go, you've already paid me your deposit. You paid $20, so you owe me 48. However you want to do. I'm gonna make the last payment August 15th. That's when it's due. And we'll just meet up, and I'm trying to set up, if not a get together with the one of the managers or something, or somebody with the Hook staff to talk to us for a little bit, or we can just have a good, nice night out as a chapter at Whataburger Field. So if you want to go, please speak to me, and or just email me, and we can talk about how we can get you going. That'll be Saturday, August 31st is the night of the game.
Yeah, Rick's on now, spoke to our chapter once, I don't know if he's still with us.
The Space Cowboy or the Hook staff?
The Hook.
Maybe I can ask. What's his name?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I put-
All right. Well, we can ask.
Are we gonna, get the tour of the stadium?
I'm working on it, Mike. I'm working on it. I'll let you know. Been a little busy the last week. I was going to do all this last week, but you know, Beryl had other ideas for me.
You know, the internet works a lot better now.
Yeah, it does. It does work a little better. All right. So I'm going to tell you, without further ado, I have waited. Matt, it's been a long time. I read your book a long time ago, Matt. Let me get this close. Even though I have technically never met Matt Dahlgren, I've known Matt for a very long time. Okay? I've known him for about, or at least the way he writes, for about 12 years. I was so impressed by this book that I included this in my academic research. I included this story in my master's thesis and in my PhD dissertation. What happened to Matt's grandpa, because of a vicious rumor, really is one of, in my opinion, one of baseball's biggest tragedies ever. Okay? This guy's career, in my opinion, was ruined. And maybe Matt agrees with me or don't. I don't know. But really, Matt, it is an honor and pleasure to finally meet you in person.
Thank you, John.
But in this town, we know that there are some parallels between Matt Grandpa's story and somebody we know in this town. You know, when a rumor is spread about somebody that maybe they did something they didn't actually do, then, you know, they're sort of vilified throughout the league. Okay? Jose Altuve and buzzers. All right. So, you know, there's some kind of it's kind of a weak parallel, you know, but there is something to it. But I really waited a long time, and when I found out how to reach Matt, I was really happy to get the opportunity to reach out to Matt, to get him to speak with us. So, Matt, without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to you because I've been waiting a long time to hear this story. So, Matt Dahlgren, it is all yours, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Joe. And I must say, can everybody
Matt,
hear
can't
me?
hear you.
Can everybody hear me?
Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
We have sound.
I know everybody online can hear me. Can everybody there hear me?
Joe, while you're setting that up,
Can you hear us, Matt?
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
He can hear us. Here. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, we're gonna get the newsletter out at the end of the month, end of July, early August, so could use a couple more stories, want to send them in?
I got it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Good.
Can you guys hear me now?
Sorry about that.
Ain't gonna say much, so.
We're getting sound. We had sound earlier.
Yeah, we did have sound earlier.
Nothing has changed, I don't think.
We're working on it. Sorry, everybody.
That's all right.
Yeah, he's not muted.
Try again, Matt.
Testing. Can you hear me now?
Now we got you.
You got me?
Thank you, Matt.
Yes, we have you.
We got
All right. I just want to start off by saying, Joe, thank you so much. It was several months ago that you reached out via email, and I was really touched by what you said, and it meant a lot to me. I could just sense and appreciate your sincerity in the way what you said to me, and it compelled me to want to come on here and talk with this group. So I really appreciate you reaching out and the kind words that you said to me originally, a few months back. I just want to start off by saying that I'll try to condense this. I mean, anytime I'm in a situation where I can talk about my grandfather, I might tend to ramble on a little bit, and I'll try to keep it condensed and tight and appropriate as far as timing goes. This whole thing started. I grew up in Southern California. I'm currently coming at you right now from the state of Washington, but I grew up in Southern California. I'm from Irvine, California, which is in Orange County, and I spent an awful lot of my youth years and even young adult years around my grandfather. He passed away in 1996, and growing up, he lived only about 45 minutes, an hour drive away from me as a kid. So I spent summer breaks, winter breaks up at my grandparents' house for extended periods of time. He had a couple of acres of land, a really big pool. He had a couple of batting cages at his house. So you can imagine, as a young kid, it was a wonderful place to be, just spend time outside at his house, but also it was the intimate time inside, sitting next to him in a chair at night and listening to his stories, which I was like a sponge. I just soaked everything up that he had to say. And he knew that I liked to listen to his stories. So he would talk, and we'd go well into the nights. And so as a kid growing up, I knew how important this particular story was to him, because I heard him tell me firsthand. When my grandfather passed away in 1996, he had been working on a book that he wanted to write to get his story out. And when he passed away, on his desk in his home office was this 3-ring binder of his memoir. These are just typed out pages. It's over close to 300 pages worth of material that he had written about his life in baseball. And when he passed away, a couple of days after he died, I went to his home by myself and just kind of walked around the house. I just wanted to be there alone in the house. And I was walking kind of from room to room. My grandmother had passed the year before, so there was nobody in the house. And I was walking around from room to room and taking it all in. And I went into his office and I grabbed that binder and I took it with me. And I kind of made a promise to him right then and there in his house that I would somehow, some way tell his story for him. I would write it. I had done some writing in high school for fun and whatnot, taken some writing classes. I've always kind of enjoyed writing, but I'd never really written anything, never published anything. But I made a promise to him at that point in time that I would complete his story for him and tell his story for him. So that's the genesis of this whole thing. Real quick background on my grandfather, and then I'll cut to what the story is. So my grandfather was born in San Francisco on June 15th, 1912. He was the second boy born in the family. A third boy was born. So there was an older brother, my grandfather, and a baby brother. By the time my grandfather was about 4 years old, his father was killed at a work accident. He was a steam fitter at a sugar refinery in San Francisco, and a pipe burst and it scalded him to death. So at the age of 3.5, almost 4, my grandfather was without a father. A few months, almost 6 months later, his baby brother died tragically also burned to death when the little boy pulled a pot of boiling water off of the table and it scalded him. So ironically, within a 6-month period of time, his father died from burns and his baby brother died from burns. So his mother was struggling financially to make ends meet. She was bouncing around from home to home there in the city, in the Mission District. A few years after Babe's father died, she married another man who took Babe and his older brother on as a stepfather and raised them in the city of San Francisco. They never had any money, so to speak of as kids growing up. It was a tough time. He also worked at the sugar refinery. Trying to make ends meet was a very difficult thing. And they oftentimes, pretty much on a yearly basis, were moving from one flat to another just to try to find someplace a little bit cheaper to live. But growing up, he always was an active kid. He was fond of all sports, played all sports. But he definitively remembered when he decided he wanted to become a professional baseball player. And that's when his stepfather took him to a Pacific Coast League game in San Francisco. And this was at the old recreation park before Seal Stadium. He was about 8 years old, and he was sitting in the stands with his stepfather watching a doubleheader. And after the first game, the guys left the field and went on into the clubhouse. And his stepfather was sitting in the stands with Babe, and he explained to Babe how the players were going to go in, put on a dry undershirt, a new jersey maybe, come out and play another game. And Babe, as a little boy, was in the stands thinking, gosh, if these guys, just play baseball all day, how do they have time to work? And he asked his dad, what do they do for work if they just play baseball all day? And his stepfather told him, this is their work. This is their job. They get paid to do this. And Babe had this epiphany, this moment right there in the stands of Recreation Park as a little boy that, well, that's what I want to do. I want to play baseball. I want to make money playing a game. And so from that point on, all throughout his childhood, he was playing on every Sandlot team he could, every semi-pro team he could in San Francisco, all the way through high school, playing as much baseball as he possibly could. The way he signed as a player, he was playing a semi-pro game. That's how they used to play these games back in those days. You could look at the old San Francisco papers. There's box scores for semi-pro games every Sunday in the papers. And these were 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, 19-year-old kids just playing baseball. And he was out there one day. He loved playing first base, but on this particular day, their third baseman busted his fingernail off during infield, and they needed someone to play third base. So the manager asked Babe if he would play third, and he did. And he made a couple of plays where he ran in to field a slow hit roller, and he barehanded it and threw to first base for the out. And there happened to be a scout there in the stands named Bobby Coltrane, who was a scout for the San Francisco Missions of the Pacific Coast League. And Bobby Coltrane really liked the way Babe was playing that day. And he pulled him aside after the game and he said, how would you like to play professional baseball? And Babe, with a grin from ear to ear, said, I'd love it. What do I do next? And he said, meet me at Seal Stadium tomorrow morning at 9:00 to sign a contract. And needless to say, Babe was there by 8:30 in the morning, ready to go to sign the contract. So that was in 1931. He signs a contract in February of 1931. Once spring training started, they shipped him off to Tucson in low-level minor league baseball in Tucson. In midway through 1931, the San Francisco Missions called him back up to be with them. And from August of 1931 through the end of the season in 1934, he never missed a game with the Missions. And ironically, a lot of the papers were calling him Iron Man and things like that because he had a consecutive game streak of 621 games in the Pacific Coast League. Little did he know that he'd be going on to replace Lou Gehrig with a much longer consecutive game streak. As a kid growing up in San Francisco, he idolized Lou Gehrig. He would had pictures of Gehrig and Babe Ruth drawn on his school binders, but particularly of Gehrig because he was a first baseman. He really had a fondness for Gehrig and idolized him. And as fate would have it, in 1939, he was called on to replace Lou Gehrig on May 2nd, 1939. And I can talk about that. If any of you have any questions at the end of this, I'd love to talk about that day if you'd like. I'll try to jump to the story here. In 1939, he replaces Gehrig in May and goes on and doesn't miss a game with the Yankees, plays every game for the Yankees the rest of that season. They go on to the World Series that year, their 4th World Series in a row, and they beat the Reds in 4 games, winning their 4th championship in a row. They were the first team to do that, to win 4 straight. Babe had a home run and 2 doubles in the World Series. And he, as a minor league ball player and then into his early major league career, he was always known throughout baseball as being an incredible defensive first baseman. Many regarded him as the best defensive first baseman in the game. I have found countless newspaper articles and blurbs from writers and quotes from players who all of them said and referred to Babe as the best defensive first baseman in the game. But Babe was not Lou Gehrig with the bat, who was. So, and sadly, that there was a lot of comparisons. Once Babe took over for Gehrig, the comparisons were always made, well, he's no Gehrig with the bat. I will say that in 1939, hitting with the Yankees, Babe was their number 8 hitter in the lineup. And as you know, there was no designated hitter back then, so you had the pitcher hitting behind the 8th hitter. So if you were hitting 8th in a lineup, you were really never getting a good pitch to hit because they were going to pitch around you to get to the pitcher. And in 1939, he had 89 RBIs hitting 8th. And that's he missed the first 8 games of the season because Gehrig was still playing. So he was always proud of the fact that even missing a week or 8 games of the season, he still almost drove in 100 runs that year hitting 8th. So after the World Series of 1939, he goes home to San Francisco. He goes to Joe DiMaggio's first wedding, to the actress Dorothy Arnold in November of 1939 in San Francisco. And it was a big party. There was a lot of ball players there, a lot of Bay Area ball players. Joe Cronin was there. Lefty O'Doul was there. A lot of PCL guys were there. And it was at that wedding that Babe struck up a conversation with Lefty O'Doul, who at the time was regarded as the biggest hitting guru in the nation, probably at that time. There were no hitting coaches with major league teams. And in 1939, O'Doul was managing the San Francisco Seals, but he was regarded as the hitting guru in baseball. So Babe struck up a conversation with O'Doul, and they got talking, and he asked O'Doul if he wouldn't mind taking a look at Babe's swing before the following spring training. So again, this is November of 1939, and he was hoping to work out with O'Doul before he went to spring training in 1940 with the Yankees. O'Doul agreed to work with Babe, and in February of 1940, the following year, a few months later after the wedding, they set up a time and place to work out, and Babe came out to work out with O'Doul. There was a bunch of San Francisco Seals players there. It was right before spring training started for the Seals and for Babe with the Yankees. And O'Doul was using this as kind of a photo op. He was taking pictures, having photographers take pictures of him and Babe and things like that. And O'Doul seemed preoccupied. Babe always told me that he wasn't really focused on trying to help Babe per se, but just kind of preoccupied talking with the members of the media and things like that. And then finally got around to having Babe take a few swings in the batting cage. And at the time, he told Babe to his face, Babe, I really don't see anything wrong with your swing. You might want to just try keeping your weight back a little longer, but everything looks good, as far as I can see with your swing. So Babe takes that advice and a couple weeks later leaves for Florida to go to spring training with the Yankees in 1940. Well, when Babe gets to camp in 1940, McCarthy was already there and ready to go, and some of the players are now trickling in. And Joe McCarthy was kind of soured on Babe. Babe could tell that McCarthy was just acting differently towards him than he was the previous year. And spring training gets underway, and Babe gets off to a hot start in spring training in 1940 with the Yankees. And before long, he's leading the Yankees in home runs in spring training. And on one particular day, Joe McCarthy calls Babe over. They're in the dugout before a game starts, and he calls Babe over. And he says, hey, Babe, he says, what are you doing different this spring? And Babe said, nothing that I know of. I'm just having a little more luck, I suppose. And McCarthy says, "What's all this crap about you going to O'Doul during the winter?" And Babe said, "Well, yeah, I went to Lefty." And he said, "But I thought that by me going to O'Doul, that if O'Doul could tell me anything, it would just help me and help the Yankees." And McCarthy said, "Well, that's not what I'm reading." He said, "O'Doul's wanting to know why I'm getting paid the big money and I can't tell my hitters how to hit." And Babe said, Babe was confused. He didn't understand what was happening here, but he knew that McCarthy was very angry. And Babe got up from that meeting and walked over to Frank Crissetti and said, "Frank," he goes, "I got to be honest with you." He said, "McCarthy just let me have it." And he said, I don't think I'm going to be a Yankee for much longer, you know." And Crissetti said, "Babe, when I got to camp, McCarthy told me that he was pretty upset with what transpired with you and Lefty O'Doul." I want to read to you something really quick, and it's something I found in the newspaper. And this is the article that Joe McCarthy was referring to. Remember, when O'Doul worked with Babe, he told Babe to his face that he didn't really see anything wrong with his swing, but that he just maybe wanted to keep his weight back a little longer. However, to the press and the papers, this is what O'Doul said. He said, this says, "Frank O'Doul's first analysis of Ellsworth Babe Dahlgren's batting stance was shocking to the old master. Quote, 'Everything is wrong,' O'Doul replied to a question. 'He has no balance. He hits off the wrong foot. He doesn't swing through right. His arms are out in front and his weight is behind. I can't understand how guys getting big money in the majors as managers can't straighten out some of these noticeable kinks,' unquote." You would think by that quote that Lefty O'Doul was describing a guy that's never swung a bat in his life, right? And that's not what Lefty O'Doul told Babe. He told Babe, "Your swing looks fine," but yet to the papers, he made it look like he didn't know how to swing a bat, and he smeared McCarthy by saying, "I can't understand how guys getting big money in the majors as managers can't straighten out some of these noticeable kinks." Unbeknownst to me at the time, when I eventually sat down to write my book, and I don't even know if my grandfather knew this, to be honest, but Joe McCarthy despised Lefty O'Doul, did not like him at all. And this goes back to 1925, and I want to touch on this because it's going to explain the animosity that McCarthy had towards Babe. In 1925, Lefty O'Doul was at the Salt Lake City Ball Club of the Pacific Coast League, and in September of that year, the Cubs purchased his contract. So in 1926, O'Doul shows up to spring training with the Cubs. Joe McCarthy is the manager of the Cubs. After spring training, before they break camp for the start of the season, McCarthy, at his urging, sends O'Doul back to the PCL. O'Doul didn't like that. O'Doul felt he was ready for the big leagues. He was not happy about going to the Hollywood club of the PCL, but he was sent there anyway. And O'Doul went on to hit .338 that year with Hollywood. After the 1926 season, the San Francisco Seals in 1927 signed O'Doul away from the Cubs. And O'Doul wins the MVP in the Pacific Coast League that year in 1927. In 1928, the New York Giants sign O'Doul. He hits .319 in the big leagues that year, and after that season is traded to the Phillies. In 1929, Lefty O'Doul hits .398 with the Phillies, obviously establishing himself in the major leagues as one of the greatest hitters in the game at that time. In 1930, with the Phillies, late September of 1930, O'Doul's injured. They're playing the Cubs in a series in Philadelphia. O'Doul's injured. The Cubs are a half game up in first place. Late in the game, O'Doul's called on to pinch hit. He hits a home run in the 8th inning, a go-ahead home run that beats the Cubs, infuriates McCarthy. The following day, again, they're playing the Cubs. The Phillies are playing the Cubs. Again, O'Doul's not playing. And again, later in the game, he's called on to pinch hit. And what do you know it? He hits another home run to put the Phillies up over the Cubs to beat the Cubs. And on this instance, as he's running the bases, and I've read newspaper accounts of this, he looks into the Cubs dugout and yells at McCarthy, just like sending a bag of gold over the fence, Joe, meaning like, there goes your pennant chances on my home runs. McCarthy was infuriated at O'Doul, and it was O'Doul getting back at McCarthy from several years previously for sending him down to the minor leagues. At the end of that 30 season, McCarthy was fired by the Cubs as manager. Now, mind you, a year or two later, he went to the Yankees and went on to be a great manager for the Yankees. But the animosity and the dislike was there. It was deep between McCarthy and O'Doul. So when O'Doul made this claim in the newspaper in 1940, questioning why big league managers were getting their salaries when they couldn't detect kinks in certain players' swings, it was a direct shot at Joe McCarthy. He knew Babe's manager was Joe McCarthy, and he deliberately used Babe to get at Joe McCarthy with that comment, that quote. So the 1940 season starts, they get underway, and for whatever reason, the Yankees just aren't clicking that year. And they get towards the end of the season, they're a couple of games back, trying to fight to win the pennant again, and they end up missing out by a couple of games to the Tigers. And for the first time in 4 years, the Yankees don't win the pennant. And McCarthy starts blaming Babe in the newspapers for losing a couple of games down the pennant stretch on a couple of errors that Babe made. He was basically saying, we don't lose these games if Dahlgren doesn't make the errors, blah, 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 blah. The season ends, and Babe goes home to San Francisco. Just before the 1941 spring training starts, Babe gets notified that he's been sold, which came as a shock not only to him, but to the members of the media as well, because he had established himself again as a really fine fielding first baseman and not a bad offensive first baseman. I mean, not consistent enough to be considered a great hitter, but still had decent power and drove in a lot of runs. But he's sold to the Boston Braves right before spring training of 1941, which was a blow to Babe. So now he goes to the Braves, and he starts the season off with the Braves, and by June of 1941, I believe he's leading the Braves in home runs with 7, leading them in RBIs, and out of nowhere, the Braves sell Babe to the Cubs. And Babe's thinking, what's happening here? Why? I mean, everything's going fine with the Braves, but now they're selling me to the Cubs. But he gets to the Cubs, and to be honest, he didn't mind it. He loved Wrigley Field, and the Cubs were a better team in the standings. And he thought, okay, well, this is working out for me. So he goes to the Cubs, ends up hitting 16 home runs that year with the Cubs, finishes the 41 season with 23 home runs, and has about 89 RBIs. A really good season in 1941. Had the most home runs in the National League by any right-handed hitter. He gets a raise at the end of the 1941 season with the Cubs, goes to spring training in 1942, starts off the season thinking, hey, I'm the Cubs first baseman. This is great. I finally have landed at a spot where I'm going to have a job. And not that long into the 1942 season, out of nowhere, the Cubs trade him to the St. Louis Browns in 1942. And he's with St. Louis for about a week, and the Browns send him back to the Cubs because there was a discrepancy over Babe's draft status, and the Browns didn't want to have him, knowing that they could lose him potentially to the draft. They sent him back to the Cubs. Well, the Cubs said, we don't want him. So the Cubs sold him to the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1942, which Babe was infuriated about because he knew that Brooklyn had Dolph Camilli that was playing first, who had just won the MVP the season previous. And he's thinking to himself, what am I going to do in Brooklyn? They have Dolph Camilli. What am I going to do? So he goes to the Dodgers in 1942 reluctantly, and pinch hits a couple of times, and comes in late in the game to play third base a couple of times. And in August of 1942, he gets notified that the Dodgers want to send him to Montreal in minor leagues. And Babe says, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to the minor leagues. I'm an established major leaguer. I'm a world champion first baseman. I've I'm not going back to the minor leagues. If I'm not going to stay here, I'm going home. And Leo DeRocher, who was the manager of the Dodgers at the time, said, well, no, this is Larry McPhail's wants you to do this. And if you have a problem with it, speak with McPhail. McPhail was the president of the Brooklyn Dodgers. So Babe went to talk to McPhail about it and said, look, I'm not going to Montreal. I have no intention of reporting, and I want to be here. The Dodgers were in first place at the time, cruising in the National League. They ended up losing it that year, but they were cruising at the time in August. And Babe felt, if nothing else, he wanted to be on part of another world championship team. And Larry McPhail said, no, we don't want you here. DeRocher doesn't want you here. And Babe said, wait a minute. DeRocher said this was your idea. So he was getting mixed signals between DeRocher and McPhail. And Babe said, you know what? I'm not reporting to Montreal. I'm going home. So he packed up his belongings and left and started to drive west. And on his way home, he stopped in Chicago to talk to Judge Landis, because he didn't feel that he was being treated fairly by the Dodgers in this whole situation. And he went and told Landis his story, his side of the story, and Landis listened to him intently and said, well, what are your intentions, Babe? And he said, my intentions are I'm going to go home and I may just retire from the game. And Landis said, well, listen, you go home and think this thing through and let the dust settle a little bit. And if you do intend to retire, please let me know and make a formal announcement about it. So Babe goes home to finish the 42 season. He's gone, goes back to San Francisco. In 1943 now that season ends, the Dodgers miss out on the pennant by a few games. And now in 1943, the Dodgers hire Branch Rickey to be the new president and director of operations with the Brooklyn Dodgers. McPhail went back to the service and back into the Army. And in a high-ranking position, left baseball, and Branch Rickey now takes over for him with the Brooklyn Dodgers. And in February of 1943, out on the West Coast, Babe, now living in Southern California, gets a letter from Branch Rickey that he'd like to meet him in Los Angeles to discuss Babe's future with the Brooklyn Dodgers. And the meeting was going to be at the Lankershim Hotel in Los Angeles. So Babe goes and meets with Branch Rickey up in Branch Rickey's hotel suite, and it's just the two of them. And Rickey had sent Babe a contract for $5,000. The previous year, Babe was making $10,000. So it was a big reduction in pay. And so Babe went to try to negotiate a new contract with Rickey for the 43 season. And it was during that contract negotiation that Rickey could tell that Babe was not too happy, and especially with the way things went the previous year. And Rickey stopped Babe in his tracks and he said, Babe, can I ask you a question? And Babe said, sure, ask me anything you want. And he said, you promise you won't get mad at me? And Babe said, well, I don't know what you're going to ask me, but sure, I go ahead. What's on your mind? And he said, right there in the hotel room, he said, Babe, he said, do you smoke marijuana? And Babe said, do I smoke marijuana? What the hell kind of question is that? No, I don't smoke marijuana. I smoke Old Gold cigarettes. And he took out a pack of cigarettes out of his pocket and threw them across the room. He was mad. Babe was pretty mad at this point. Threw them across the room at Rickey and said, have those analyzed if you think I smoke marijuana. And he says, that's a cheap thing to say about a guy you're trying to use this as a negotiation ploy against me, trying to accuse me of smoking marijuana. He says, I don't ever want to hear that again out of you or anybody else. And if I do, I'm going to go to the commissioner. And Babe stormed out of the office, out of the hotel room, and went home, thinking that his time with Brooklyn was over at that point. A couple weeks later, he's notified that Babe's traded to the Phillies. Brooklyn trades Babe to the Phillies, which Babe was happy, relieved, just to get out of Brooklyn, start fresh. So he goes to Philadelphia, starts the season in 43 with the Phillies, gets off to a red-hot start. By June in 1943, he's leading the National League in hitting. He's hitting around 358 at the beginning of June. One day, there was a trainer that the Phillies had hired that season to work with the players, more of a strength trainer. It was a new thing that they were doing. Bill Cox, the new owner of the Phillies, had hired this guy. He had a track and field background, and he came over to be the trainer for the Phillies. And Babe was laying on the training table one day in St. Louis, and this trainer said to Babe, he said, "Babe, can I ask you a question?" And Babe said, "Sure." And he says, "You know, Babe, when Bill Cox hired me to work for the Phillies, he said, I didn't know anything about baseball. He said, I have a track and field background. He said, so I watched you. I watched a couple veterans on the team, and I watched how you guys were on and off the field. And I wanted to learn about the game through you." And Babe said, "Yeah." And he said, and this gentleman said, "So that's why what I'm hearing right now really disturbs me." And Babe says, "What are you hearing?" And this strength coach said, "I'm hearing that you smoke marijuana." And Babe was laying on the training table in St. Louis. And right then, he started a tear. He told me later that a tear rolled down his cheek, because he thought to himself, this is the second time he's heard this. It's clearly being talked about now. And he was thinking, how do I stop this? Why is it being said? Who's spreading it, and how can I stop this from being spread? Because it's not true. And let's keep in mind really quick here, this is 1943. This isn't 2024, where marijuana now is legal in a lot of states. If you were a marijuana smoker on a Major League Baseball team in 1943, that was not a good thing. I mean, that would not be tolerated at all. So Babe got up from the training table right there in the clubhouse in St. Louis and went to Bucky Harris, the manager of the Philadelphia Phillies, and said, "Bucky, I'd like to get permission to see Commissioner Landis the next time we're in Chicago." That's where Landis's office was. And Harris said, "What do you want to see the commissioner for?" And Babe said, "Well, there's things being said about me, and I want to put a stop to it." And Bucky Harris said, "Oh, you mean the marijuana story?" And Babe said, "You knew about this?" And Bucky Harris said, "Yes." He said, "When Ricky traded you to us, Ricky told us that you smoked marijuana. We didn't believe it, and we accepted the trade anyway, but he told us that you smoked marijuana." And Babe thought, my God, like, how is this happening? Why is this happening? I'm leaving out a very critical point of this, and I want to backtrack to one thing. When Babe started the season with the Phillies red hot, and he's leading the league in hitting, they're in New York one day to play the Giants, and they're in the hotel in New York. And Babe and his roommate, Danny Litweiler, are in the lobby of the New Yorker hotel. And in the lobby of the hotel, they spot Charlie Dressen, who had been a coach for the Dodgers. And they walked over and they said hello to Charlie. And Charlie said that he was in the hotel meeting with some of the Dodger executives upstairs in a meeting. And he told Babe, he said, "You know, Babe, your name just came up in the meeting I was just in, because a lot of the executives are grilling Ricky," and Ricky was in the meeting. "They're grilling Ricky as to why we, the Dodgers, traded you, and here you are now leading the National League in hitting." And Ricky told the members of that meeting that we traded you, the Dodgers traded you because you smoke marijuana. So now those 8 executives in that meeting heard that. Charlie Dressen heard it. Now Danny Litweiler, who's Babe's roommate's hearing this, and Danny Litweiler said, "What the hell are you talking about?" He said, "I'm with Babe 24/7 on the road. I've never seen Babe do that. That's just not true." So fast forward now to the Bucky Harris meeting. Bucky Harris says, "Sure, by all means, you can see the commissioner the next time we're in Chicago." So it was a couple weeks later, the Phillies were in Chicago to play the Cubs, and Babe walked in unannounced to Landis's office once again and said, "I need to speak to you about something that's being said about me." And Landis said, "What is it?" And Babe said, "There's a rumor going around that I smoke marijuana. I've heard it on multiple occasions now, and it couldn't be further from the truth." And Babe said, "I'll do whatever I have to do to take whatever test I can take to prove that I don't smoke marijuana." He said, "I want my name cleared, and I want this to go away. It's having an effect on me as a player." And O'Doul said, he said, Babe, he said, any quote unquote, and I hope I don't offend anybody when I say this, but this is what Judge Landis told Babe. He said, Babe, any man that would say that about another man without knowing the truth should have his balls cut off, quote unquote. Judge Landis to Babe. And he said, you know what, Babe? He says, we're going to go downstairs. We're going to walk across the street. I know a doctor in town here in downtown Chicago. I'm going to go introduce you to this doctor, and we're going to start the process of getting you drug tested. Great, Babe thought. So imagine this. This is in the middle of the 1943 season. Babe, a member of the Philadelphia Phillies, going downtown with the commissioner of baseball, walking in unannounced to a doctor's office, the commissioner introducing Babe to the doctor and telling the doctor, this is Babe Dahlgren of the Philadelphia Phillies. He's being accused of smoking marijuana. He'd like to be tested, whatever we can do to do that. Can you please help us? This doctor says, well, listen, the way to do this properly is for Babe to have a series of tests. And in order to do that right, he's going to need to get with a doctor in Philadelphia who he can see on a regular basis and have a series of tests and have the results come back over a course of time. And this doctor referred Babe to a doctor in Philadelphia. They left there. Landis told Babe, he said, Babe, you see this doctor. You send baseball the bills for this. I don't want you paying a dime for this. Major League Baseball will pay for it. And Babe did. So when Babe got to Philadelphia, he started seeing this doctor, started being tested, started having needles stuck in him, reactionary tests done, testing his reflexes, all sorts of tests. And of course, everything came back negative. I will say that my grandfather was the first Major League Baseball player to ever be drug tested, and he did so voluntarily. I just want to make that known. Unlike some of these other players in subsequent years, when the whole steroid scandal came, they refused to be tested. They wouldn't voluntarily test. Babe voluntarily tested. So the rest of the 43 season goes by, and Babe would check in with Commissioner Landis periodically to find out what he's doing about this and what kind of remedy there is to this whole thing. And every time Babe heard somebody new telling him they've heard the rumor, he would write to Landis and say, hey, I just heard it again from so-and-so. I just heard it again from this player. And he was compiling notes of everybody he heard the rumor from, and he would make sure to send it to Landis so Landis was aware of it. Well, at the end of the 43 season, Babe had heard nothing from Landis. And 44 comes and goes, and nothing from Landis. And it wasn't until 1940, in fact, I want to just make sure I have this right here. When Landis died, I want to say in 44. Babe was checking in with Landis to find out what he was going to do with it. And Landis just kept sweeping it on the rug. I'm working on it, but nothing was coming of it. After the 43 season, Babe was an all-star with the Phillies. He's traded to the Pirates for no reason, out of nowhere, just traded to the Pirates. And he goes to the Pirates. He's starting to hear it again and again. Al Lopez, a teammate on the Pirates of his, pulls Babe aside one day and tells Babe that he heard about it in a meeting with Branch Rickey and Donnie Bush, a manager of a minor league team. Al Lopez heard about it. Again, Babe writes to Landis, nothing. When Landis dies, Babe's hopes were shattered. He was thinking, oh my God, like, what do I do now? I don't have an ally. There's no union, obviously, to fight for him. There's no agents to help him out. It's just him against baseball. So when Happy Chandler came on to be the new commissioner, the first thing Babe did was wrote a letter to Happy Chandler and explained everything that had transpired up to this point, all of the people that have heard the rumor, the testing that he had taken. And Happy Chandler essentially gave him the proverbial, hey, I'll look at it, Babe, and when I have time to look at it, I'll take a look at it type thing. Nothing ever happens. Babe plays for the Pirates for 44 and 45, and in 46, he's sold to the Browns, where early in the season, he dives for a ball at Comiskey Park and separates his shoulder and misses a lot of time in the 46 season. And even when he comes back, his shoulder is never right. And 1946 is his last year in the big leagues. And he spends the next 2 years trying to rehab his shoulder and come back playing in the minor leagues with the Baltimore Orioles in 1947, and then with Sacramento in the Pacific Coast League in 1948. And after that, that was the end of his professional baseball career. He has, at this time now, he's got 2 young boys. And as his boys are growing up, he's spending all of his time with his boys, my dad being one of them, developing them into baseball players. But always thinking about, and it's always bothering him, the rumor. And in his later years, as an older man, as my grandfather, he sat down to write his story because once and for all, he wanted to clear the record. And in 1980, his home burned to the ground, and the book that he was working on burned. Everything he had, all his memorabilia, everything gone, burned. So he had to rebuild his home from scratch. And started writing his book again, which is what this is. Again, once again, this is the book that he rewrote for a second time. And so I just felt so compelled, loving my grandfather as much as I did, to tell his story for him on his behalf. And I took the book, and through a lot of extensive research, years after he passed away, I finally sat down and started the writing and came up and finished with the book Rumor in Town, which Joe was so kind to talk about and reference at the very beginning of this. And in this book, I lay out the story in greater detail, and I lay out who I believe and who Babe believes ultimately started the rumor. And I was able to kind of corroborate that and get a verbal proof of that from Marty Appel, who's a Yankee historian. But it's Joe McCarthy that started the rumor. And my grandfather in his later years always wondered he was always mad at Ricky for accusing Babe and asking Babe about smoking marijuana and do you smoke marijuana? And then Ricky for telling the Dodger executives that he smoked marijuana. But as Babe got older, he thought, I think Ricky spread the rumor, but he didn't think Ricky started the rumor. And it always bothered Babe as to who started the rumor, who disliked him so much to start a rumor. And the only person he could ever come back to was Joe McCarthy. And after Babe passed away, it was when I was writing this book that I spoke with Marty Appel on the phone. And Marty Appel told me that longtime New York Times sports writer, Hall of Fame writer, John Drebinger, told Marty Appel that Joe McCarthy told John Drebinger that they got rid of Babe Dahlgren after the 1940 season because he smoked marijuana. So right there, I realized that Babe was right, that it was Joe McCarthy that started this rumor. And I thought, well, as I'm writing this book, I'm thinking, why would he do that? I know that he didn't like Lefty O'Doul, and I know that he didn't like Babe. He held a grudge against Babe because O'Doul embarrassed McCarthy publicly in the newspapers. So he held a grudge against Babe for that. But then I'm thinking, well, why would he accuse him of this? And then I started seeing all of the articles after the Yankees sold Babe to the Braves. The writers were questioning the Yankees, McCarthy's line of thinking of why would he get rid of Dahlgren, who was the best defensive first baseman in the game and a long ball threat. Why would they do this? And I think McCarthy, in order to save face, he just got tired of answering the questions time and time again, that he came up with this rumor that we got rid of him because he was a marijuana smoker. I don't know why he chose that. I don't know why he used that as a reasoning or where he even came up with that. But it was true because Marty Appel told me that John Drebinger told him that McCarthy told Drebinger that. So it's just one of these mysteries to me is I'll never know why McCarthy did it, but Babe was right in thinking that it had to have been McCarthy because he thought there was no one in the game that disliked him as much as McCarthy did. And he couldn't figure out why he disliked him other than what O'Doul did to stir up that level of animosity. I know I'm kind of bouncing around here, But that's, in a nutshell, that is the book, and I talk about it in greater detail in the book. But if anybody has any questions about the story, the rumor, Lou Gehrig, or anything, please ask. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So did that rumor stick with him all the way until the end, or was there ever any kind of resolution or?
Good question. So yeah, it stuck with him until the day he died, and it bothered him until the day he died. There was never any resolution during his playing days. So that's why in his older years he wanted to write a book about it to clear his own name. Probably the proudest thing that ever came out of this book for me was the blurb on the back of the book by Fay Vincent, because to have a former commissioner say what I'm about to read, I felt like it vindicated Babe, who wasn't alive to know this. Babe was long gone by this point, but I want to read this. So Fay Vincent said, "Baseball, like life, can sometimes be a cruel and vicious business. The game is wonderful. Some of the people in it from time to time are not worthy of the game. This is the fascinating story of how a false rumor of drug use ruined a fine player's career." I loved the book. To me, having a former commissioner say that was gold. That's all Babe ever wanted, was for a commissioner. And in his later years, he would write to Bowie Kuhn. He wrote to Peter Ueberroth. I have letters writing that he wrote to these guys asking for help to please look at his case, please hear his story, and just clear his name. And the ironic thing is that people weren't even talking about this. It wasn't like this was on the front pages of newspapers and people were talking about Babe Dahlgren being a marijuana smoker, but it bothered Babe. He wanted his name cleared. It's not that he couldn't care less who knew about it or what. He just wanted a commissioner in baseball to say, no, this wasn't true. This was a rumor, and this man was clean. That's all he ever wanted. And he put all of his hope into Landis, thinking that Landis was going to do that. And Landis just delayed and delayed and delayed. And the reason being, and let's face it, commissioners are where they are because of the owners. The owners are the ones that put the commissioners in their job. And if you're a commissioner of baseball, especially back then, when the players have no representation, it's the player against baseball. If you're a commissioner, are you really going to punish a prolific owner, a prolific president in the game of baseball? Or are you just going to kind of sweep things under the rug and just pretend like it didn't happen? That's what happened back then. He went to Landis and to Chandler, and neither of them did anything. I've tried, when Babe's home burned, everything, all of his correspondence, everything burned. He had a letter from Landis, a letter that Landis wrote to Babe after they met in 1943, where Landis just wanted to go over what just transpired. He says, "Babe, just writing a letter to you to say that you came to me regarding a rumor," and he just memorialized everything about the meeting. Well, that burned, and I would love to have a copy of Landis's letter that would show that Babe in fact went to him. I've tried to get Babe's access to Babe's files at Major League Baseball years ago. I mean, this book came out in 2007, so we're talking about back then. I reached out to Major League Baseball to see if I could have access to Babe's player file, and they wouldn't give it to me, because I was hoping that a copy of that letter would be in Babe's player file. I know there's a lot of things in Babe's file, because when Babe was still alive, he was getting things from his file so he could put together his book. So I know there's stuff in a file there, but when I asked specifically for a Landis letter, they told me they couldn't help me. This is Major League Baseball telling me this. They couldn't help me, that it was I guess they were basically saying because it wasn't Babe asking for it, they weren't going to divulge and give over what was in his player profile. Thought that was a little odd. I've tried to find it through the Judge Landis archives. There's a library in Chicago, I believe, that has all of his papers from his legal days and some of his baseball papers, hoping to find this letter, a carbon copy of a letter that he wrote to Babe in 1943, and I haven't been able to find it yet. But to answer your question in a long-winded way, he never got resolution. My grandfather, that is, he never got resolution over this, which is why I wrote the book.
Research. Were there any other players, whether they were famous or not, that were kicked out of baseball because of marijuana? Did you found out about it? And interesting, why is it that they choose sort of marijuana as the drug of choice here to use to?
You were, the audio was kind of cutting in and out. I think you asked, were there any, could you repeat the first part of that question about the players?
Yes, were there any of the players that you're aware of in your research that were kicked out of the game because of marijuana use?
No.
That's the first part.
No. And to that point, when I sat down to write this book, I started reaching out and writing letters to teammates of Babe's, people that I knew Babe, players, old players that knew Babe. I wrote to Dom DiMaggio. I wrote to Bobby Doerr. I wrote to Danny Litweiler, who roomed with Babe. I wrote to Al Lopez. I got correspondence back from all of them. Bobby Doerr and Dom DiMaggio, it's funny, they all said both the same thing. They both praised Babe's defensive abilities as a first baseman in the letter back to me. And both of them, though, said they never had heard the rumor about Babe. Okay. Litweiler obviously heard the rumor because he was there when Charlie Dressen told them both about it in the lobby of the hotel. And Litweiler told me in a detailed letter how untrue it was. Al Lopez confirmed hearing the rumor. And there were other players that Babe knew about it. But by the time I sat down to write the book, they had passed on. So I didn't have a lot of players to reach out to at that time. But the ones that I did, two of them had never heard the rumor. Two of them had. And the two that had heard it told me not to believe it, that in their opinion, he never used marijuana. They had never heard of him or seen him using marijuana. And they themselves did not know why that drug was used in an effort to smear Babe. They thought it was preposterous.
It's interesting that he got traded and went from team to team to team. A few people knew about this rumor, the rumor spread. But it wasn't like, I guess, they weren't going to kick him out of the game because of it.
No, there was a dark cloud that hung over him. When the rumor really took a hold, it was in 1943 when he was with the Phillies. And that was the one year he was an all-star. And here's an interesting story. So he shows up to the all-star game. He's voted on the all-star team. And Frank McCormick, who was also voted on the all-star team, Reds first baseman, bowed out of the game with a bad back. So in a day or two leading up to the game, it was known that Frank McCormick wasn't going to play that in the 43 all-star game. So Babe naturally thought, well, okay, I'm at the time in the top 3 in hitting in the National League. It stands to reason if McCormick's not going to play first, I'll play first. Well, what happens is that L.B. Fletcher was then Pirates first baseman. L.B. Fletcher was selected to replace Frank McCormick, and L.B. Fletcher starts the game at first base in 1943. And when Babe sees the lineup card, before the game and is told the lineup, he couldn't believe it. And he went up to Billy Southworth, the manager of the All-Star team, the National League All-Star team, and started to say to him, hey, what's going on with how is L.B. Fletcher, the replacement first baseman, coming in and starting over me? I was voted on the team. And Billy Southworth told Babe, he started to explain it to Babe, and he said, oh, forget it. He says, I don't know what good it'll do to talk about it. And Babe could sense that Southworth was frustrated by it. And Babe got the impression that somebody, and again, this is not provable, it's just Babe's gut feeling that day at the All-Star game. But Babe got the feeling that somebody had got to Southworth and had talked to him and told Southworth about Babe. and the rumor, and because this is right at the epicenter and the peak of the rumor happening. But it always bothered Babe that he was voted on the team as an all-star, was among the league leaders and hitters, and the replacement first baseman came in and started. And he felt that was as a result of this smear on his name at that time. It can't prove it, but that's in his gut. That's what he felt.
Anyone else? Go ahead, man.
Yeah, Tal Smith was on the Zoom. There he is. Tal, you want to ask that question we talked about earlier?
I think he's on.
Tal
mute.
said.
Tal, you're on mute.
He just flashed back on. Tal and I were talking earlier. He was with the Astros in the early, he directed the farm system when the 45 started. Said there were 2 Dahlgrens that they signed.
That's right.
Were they your dad or your uncle?
Yes, my dad, Don. Yeah, my dad, Don, and my uncle Ray, both signed with the Houston organization. My dad signed as a pitcher. I want to say this was 1965. My dad signed as a pitcher, and actually roomed with in North Carolina. I want to say it was North Carolina, but roomed with John Paciorek, who is famous for having the perfect batting average. If that whatever, I think he hit 1,000. He was
For 3 with 2 walks.
exactly. So in 1965, my dad and John Paciorek roomed with one another briefly. It was right into the start of the season. My dad hurt his arm as a pitcher, and that kind of, he tried to rehab his arm, and it wasn't coming back, and they released him. And he later, a couple years later, signed with the Red Sox in 1968 because my dad could always hit. He was a really good hitter in high school, was athlete of the year at his high school. He had a really good bat. So in 1968, the Red Sox pick him up, and lo and behold, he starts the season with them, and he tears a muscle in his leg. It's just my dad had very unfortunate luck with injuries, and he just never got his career off the ground. His brother, my uncle, ended up pitching minor league baseball for about 4 seasons, the better part of 4 seasons. But my dad never got off the ground. I want to show you guys a photo here that might blow you away. Just give me 1 second and let me pull it up. Hold on here. This is 1968 spring training. Let's see if I can show you over the. Okay. But you're all familiar with Ted Williams' book, The Science of Hitting. I assume you're familiar with it. There's some pictures in Ted Williams' book taken of Ted Williams from underground, underneath him, shooting up at him. Okay. So you're seeing the photos of the cameras underneath Williams shooting up. Williams was standing on a plexiglass, piece of plexiglass, and they had dug a hole under the ground, and the photographer was laying under it, shooting up at Williams for the photos. Here's, I don't know if you can see this.
Go back.
Too much glare.
Yeah, it's too much glare. Darn it.
Man, if you want to email that to me, I'll share it to everybody.
Or text it.
Text it. Kind of froze there. Man, you're froze.
There he is.
But Ted Williams is standing right here on top of that plexiglass thing. So the neat thing about this photo is this photo was taken on the day that those photos of Ted Williams were taken. It's from spring training 1968. It's just the photo means nothing to anyone else. It's just a neat photo for me because my dad's standing right here, but Ted Williams is standing right here on this plexiglass board that the photos were used for his book. I will send you the photo, Joe, so you can see it and share it with the group. But yes, to answer your question, the 2 Dahlgrens that you were referring to were my dad and my uncle.
Okay, so the follow-up is your grandfather played Major League Ball. Both of your his sons.
Yep.
How far did the genes go?
Okay,
How was
so
your career?
yeah, good question. So you can imagine me as a young boy. My dream was to be a baseball player too, and so and of course I chased that dream as long as I possibly could. I was a switch hitting catcher, and I played 4 years of high school baseball, 4 years of college baseball in Southern California college at a small school. I was really hoping to get my last year in college was 1992. I was really hoping that I might get drafted out of my senior year. Thought I might late, and it didn't happen. But I still had the itch to play. I still felt like I could play, and so I stayed in shape. And there used to be an old baseball newspaper called Baseball Weekly. It was a weekly baseball magazine. And I read an article or an ad in Baseball Weekly that there was a new independent league starting up. It's called the Frontier League, and it was starting in 1993, and that they were holding tryouts in Chillicothe, Ohio, to form the 8 teams in this new league. And I'm thinking, you know what? I still have the itch. I'm still in shape. I'm going to go to this tryout in Ohio. So I flew out to Ohio. It was a 2-day tryout. I tried out, and then at the end of the tryout, they held a little draft at a hotel. It was kind of cool, actually. They had each team had a table set up, and all the guys were there for the draft. And I ended up getting picked by the West Virginia Coal Sox for the inaugural season of the 1993 Frontier League. But my career was short-lived. If you go back and look, you'll see what I'm talking about. There was 8 teams in the league. And my team, the West Virginia Coal Sox, we played in Huntington, West Virginia. Well, the biggest mistake they made when they were forming this league is having a new startup independent team in the same city as an affiliated team. There was the Huntington Cubs in Huntington, West Virginia. And now we come along, the new kid on the block, a startup independent team. No one came out to our games. And we knew within the first 3 weeks that we weren't going to make it. And we as players were notified about 3 weeks into the season that the team was going bankrupt. They couldn't pay us anymore. And so they sent us home. We were done. They sent us home, and my professional career was over. And I went home, and there was another team that also went bankrupt. And so the 6 remaining teams finished the season. And then subsequently over the years, they've added more teams to it. If you look right now, the Frontier League is a flourishing league. It's still a league. I just so happened to get into it during its inaugural season, and I had the bad luck of being on a team that couldn't sustain itself, and I was sent home. So that's my professional baseball experience.
I think they owe you money.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Man, I had a couple of questions. In my research, YouTube's a great thing. I once found an interview that your grandpa did with Keith Olbermann.
Yeah.
A very young Keith Olbermann about this rumor.
Yeah.
Okay. Was Keith Olbermann the only big-time media guy that your grandpa talked to about that?
Yes. In fact, that interview, I want to say, took place in 1989.
Right.
And the reason why I know that, it was the 50th anniversary of Gehrig coming out and Babe replacing Gehrig. And there used to be a show on ESPN called Up Close, and Roy Firestone was the host. And that it just so happens that week, Keith Olbermann was guest hosting for Roy Firestone. And Keith, who is he's quite an encyclopedia for baseball, and he's got a world of knowledge for baseball. He had Babe on because it was the 50th anniversary of the Gehrig replacement, and so Olbermann was guest hosting, but he had Babe on to talk about that and to talk about other things like the rumor. And I agree with you. And if you look, that clip's out there on YouTube. And Babe talks about it kind of at length a little bit, about the circumstances leading up to it. And you can see just in that little clip of Babe talking to Olbermann, you can see that how affected Babe was even then talking about it, how passionate he was about getting his story out. So I would encourage anybody to just Google Babe Dahlgren, Keith Oberman, and there's probably a couple of clips on YouTube that you can find. And Joe, you might be able to find him and share them with the group there, so they can see it. But yeah, that was done in 1989.
I never thought about this till tonight. I don't know why I never thought about this, but you had mentioned that he tried to get pretty much every commissioner to look at this.
Yeah.
At least try to clear his name all the way up to Faye Benson, I guess. But you never mentioned one other person, unless I just missed it. Did he ever try to contact Marvin Miller?
I don't. I'm gonna say I don't think so. In fact, I'd probably say no to that, because I'm sure if he did, it would be in his writings here. I don't ever recall him telling me that. He wrote a lot of letters. I know that. I know that he was constantly writing letters at his typewriter. So perhaps he did, and I'm not aware of it. And again, sadly, when the fire hit in 1980, all of his correspondence burned. And so if he had written to Marvin Miller prior to 1980, that was all gone. But after the fire, I don't believe he did. If he did, I just wasn't aware of it. I don't know. It's a good question, actually.
Anybody else? Well, Matt, again, as I said when the meeting started, it's the first time I've ever met Matt in person, but I feel like I've known him for like 12, 13 years, because that's when I got this book. So thank you again, Matt, and maybe one day we'll meet in person. I need to sign the book.
I would love that. I would love that, Joe. And for anyone who's interested, just to learn more about the book and to read quotes from various writers back then, and see photos and things like that, if you just go to rumorintown.com, you can see all sorts of information about the book. And again, I just appreciate having the platform to talk to your group tonight. And Joe, I really appreciate your sincere email that you sent out a few months back, and it really touched me, because I could see that you got it. You understood the story, and you got it, and that's what matters to me. And it just makes me feel like I did right by writing the book, because all I wanted to do was just tell my grandfather's story.
Yeah, good. And the trivia winner tonight will get this copy that I've had for a long time. All right, I ordered another copy. So
well, I was going to say,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I don't want you to miss out on your copy. So if you're giving away that copy, I'll send you another copy, Joe.
Yeah, okay, sure. But again, man, thank you very much.
Good job, man.
For everything. Thank you, man.
Thank you guys very much for having me. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
You too. You too. All right, Chris. Oh, before Chris, while Chris is getting set up, this guy, y'all know Sam, right? Sam?
Hi, Sam.
Mississippi.
Sam, right. Sam is writing a book. You get ready to write a book, or it's in the final stages.
I'm finishing up the computer simulations right now, so that's the last part.
Okay. He has a fascinating argument in his book. All right. And his argument, make sure I got this right.
Mhm.
The 1971 Astros, in your opinion, were one of the best teams up to that point in franchise. It should have been the first playoff team in the city's history.
I mean, it's the easy way to say it is it's complicated. And me and Mr. Tal Smith spoke earlier today about the front office composition, so he was helping me out today. I'll try to keep it short. Essentially, the lead up to 1971, and I picked 1971 because look at the way the roster's developed. That was the year that determined that all the holes would have been filled first. Not necessarily that it would have been the best season of that time period, but it wouldn't have been the
All right,
first really
Sam,
good one.
hold on a second. Don't give away too much, because I want you to come back and tell the whole story. Okay, just give like a brief airbrush of why you think that team was so great. But I want to have Sam come back and tell the whole story. Okay, maybe September or October. So just give like a quick 5-minute or 2-minute airbrush. All right. So I want people to look forward to your presentation. Go ahead.
Okay, so I didn't prepare a script.
Well, that's fine.
So essentially, it begins at the top, like a lot of things do, with the front office, and from there, different roles and different people affect in different ways the on-field product. And a lot of these ways are probably things that y'all know about. So, I mean, I don't really have to say too much to y'all because y'all likely already know. But I mean, it's the development of the team and seeing the amount of really good homegrown players that the scouting team and the front office signed and developed, and the farm system was able to bring up to be such great big league players. I mean, Mr. Smith himself said that between 1961 and 1972 or three, the Houston Ball Club signed and developed more big league players than any other ball club at that time. And so that's very indicative of how good the ball club could have been in the early 70s. Larry Dierker, somebody else who I've been in touch with, said the early 70s, and 1971 fits in well with that. So I think that that's a good basis. And so obviously it goes a lot deeper than that. And after my conversation with Mr. Smith today, I'm going to do some editing to correct some things that he was able to give you some insight on. But yeah, I'm right in the middle of trying to get all that done.
Well, I would just like to say, Sam, that if your argument is true, that just makes 1971 an even greater year. Besides the fact that was the year I was born. But yeah, I'd love to hear that argument at a later time. So the 1971 Astros coming soon. All right, the argument here. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
What record did they have in 1971?
What was their
record
record
did
in
they have?
1970? Go ahead.
What record
Their
did they
record.
have, or what record did I determine they could have had?
What they had?
What they actually had.
79 and 83.
71.
79 and 83. But you said 79 wins and 83 losses in 1970?
No, that's not correct. That was a record.
That's a record.
Right.
Who's on the first?
So it should be an interesting argument.
What did he project?
What?
What did he project?
That's to be
That's
determined.
it. That's it. Yeah, this is the trailer version.
And what year did they trade Martin?
All right. So before we get too far into the movie, Chris, thanks, Sam. Thanks. Go ahead, Chris. Baseball's Best Pinch Hitter by Chris Chestnut.
All right. Thank you, Joe. So I'm going to look at what I determined to be baseball's best pinch hitter. And I've been thinking about this for a while, trying to find a way to bring all the data together and end up with an answer. So the first thing I look for is see if anybody's already done this. Sometimes I've had ideas, I look and I've already got an answer. So I couldn't find anything what I was looking particularly for, but in researching it, these are some of the names that came up about every time when you see a list, a subjective list of who's baseball's best pinch hitter. And justifiably so. You got Smokey Burgess, who has most RBIs pinch hitter of anybody. Lane Harris, who had more plate appearances, hits as a pinch hitter. Cliff Johnson, for the longest time, had the home run record for a pinch hitter. McCovey, an all-around great hitter, had tied for the most grand slams. Manny Mota is the one, whenever I says pinch hitter from my age, that's the classic pinch hitter. For the longest time, he was had the most pinch hits. Matt Stairs, who now is record holder for most pinch hit homers, hit 15 of them between the ages of 38 and 42. So at the tail end of his career, he blossomed as a great pinch hitter. And then you look at the kind of the stats of who did what. The problem I have is none of this is all subjective. There's no one number that you can compare these guys with. And so I started looking for a way to measure performance and thinking that what's the purpose of the game? The purpose of the game is to score runs. So if we can find a statistic that helps determine run creation, that would go a long way to figure out who was the best. And so you look at the basic statistics, you got batting average, but that doesn't really do anything for run creation. On base percentage, the same kind of thing. It's a good number, but it doesn't really tell you what's going on. And slugging percentage, another one that's, everybody knows what that is. And you start getting some more of the modern type statistics. You get WAR, which isn't really applicable to these kind of discrete instances. And then you get into some really tough ones, and weighted on base average. And the theory behind this is, in slugging percentage, a double is worth twice a single, and a home run is worth twice a double. But based on various research, that's not really the case. Sometimes doubles are more or less than that, but it's by year. So every season has different factors that go in this formula. And since I'm looking at players that play for 5, 10, 15 years, that got very cumbersome calculation. So it's a good number, but not really what I wanted to face as far as calculations. And the one I thought was going to be the greatest was weighted runs created. Now we're into this esoteric type stuff. And it would take longer to explain it than it would be actually what benefit I thought we'd get out of it. And again, it's also adjusted for parks and leagues. And I'm looking at, what ballpark 1917's got played in. I'm not really gonna, that's too much work. So looking around, the best one I found, and the one we're going to use is OPS, simplest one. It may not be the best statistic, but it's a very good approximation of batting performance in creating runs. And I was looking deeper into this. It turns out that on-base percentage is worth more than slugging when it comes to run creation. It's almost twice as much. So the formula I'm using is what I'm calling enhanced OPS, which multiplies on-base percentage by 1.8. That's what, and then adds the slugging. So it's a little bit different number than you would see if you look at OPS in the paper. And then to simplify it, because you end up with these oddball crazy numbers, is we're going to normalize it so that the average EOPS is 100. And then we would take what I'm calling the pinch hit factor is we would relate everything to that average value. So for example, if I tell you that a pinch hitter has a value of 120, that means he's 20% better in OPS than the average of the entire population. And of course, we don't get to that, and his score is 80, he'd be 20% below the average. So we're comparing everything to the average of the population. Then we're going to gather the data, and usually I use retrosheet data, and they had information all the way back to 1912. And so from that, we end up with a little over 9,000 players that pitch at least once for one pitching appearance in that time period. Over 400,000 plate appearances, and we end up with the whole population of pitch hitters had an OPS of 886. And to cut down the kind of guys that didn't hit very much, we use a minimum of 200 career plate appearances as the cutoff. And that left us with 323 qualifying players for this analysis. And so who's the best pinch hitter from this? Here's the top 20. And number one is a guy named Cy Williams. 133.9 means he was about 34% better than the average pinch hitter. You see some other famous names we saw earlier. Smokey Burgess is on this list. Covey, Cliff Johnson. So who was Cy Williams? I never heard of that guy. So he played for the Cubs and the Phillies back in 1912 to 1930. He was the first victim of the Williams shift because he was a dead pull hitter as a left-hander. So they shifted him around. He was the career National League home run leader till 1929. He was a really good hitter. He had a number of seasons over 300. He was a big home run hitter for the time. Career batting average of 292. Led the league in homers 4 times. So he was a real hitter. But when I looked at this list, this assumes every plate appearance is equal in the outcome of the game. And we know by just intuition that there's certain times of the game where it's more important to get a hit than others. So I started looking for a way to improve the analysis and trying to find a way to bring in the game situation to the players at bat and see which one is more important. And so we're going to use the leverage index. And this is a measure of an event's, how it impacts the win probability of a team. So the higher the number, the better. So it considers you take the score, the inning, runners on base, how many outs, and it ranges from 0 to over 10. So you have an example of, say it's the bottom of the 8th, 1 out, no runners on, you're down 4 runs. You get a leverage index of 0.4. Conversely, if you're in the top of the 9th, there's 2 outs, base loaded to tie game, your leverage index is 6.9, a much higher value.
What if you're trending that too?
There's all numbers for all situations.
Shows up.
Yeah, well, yeah, it depends. Tight, close, late is much better than early in your bottom 9. So looking at all the pinch hitters we have, we can group them by from low, medium, high, and very high. And I'm just interested in high and very high. I want to see what in the toughest situation, who was the best pinch hitter in only those situations, which make up about 36% of all the plate appearances. So we're going to drop the low and mediums and just look at the best players in the toughest situations. And so when you take that group, you go down from 9,000 to a little over 7,500 pinch hitters, which makes sense. You're going to pinch hit in a late close game. About 100,000 plate appearances. And here for this group, population, the OPS is 928. Remember back, the average, everybody was 886. So it makes sense intuitively because you're going to put your best players in and they perform the best. That's why you put them in there.
Jerry Lynch.
So we're going to cut this down to a minimum of 100 plate appearances, and we have 157 qualifying pitch hitters. So if we go from the top 10, we go from the bottom up, you'll see Fred Whitfield. Now his 129.6, he's 29% better than the guys who are in high leverage situations. So this is the best. We're comparing the best in the toughest situations. Joe Orsolak, our first ex-Astro, our second Astro, Mr. Wally, Earl Torgerson, Willie McCovey, because he's Willie McCovey, probably the best overall hitter of anybody on this list. David DeLucci. And before we reveal number 1, let's go look back at our famous pinch hitters, see how they did in this list. Smokey Burton's ranked 12. Cliff Johnson did not have enough high leverage plate appearances to qualify for this. He had 98, and the limit was 100, or the minimum was 100. But if we lowered the threshold, he still wouldn't be in the top 20. Moda and Stairs, they're in the top 25 or so. So our best pinch hitter, Merv Redmond.
Of course.
So he was he played for 4 teams from 68 to 80, and really he was at his best during the 3 pennant years for the Orioles in 69 through 71. He was kind of a super sub, and he ended up playing more innings in the outfield than anybody. They had Paul Blair at that time and a couple of other ones. He led the Orioles in hitting that year. He had a career pinch hit batting average higher than his regular batting average. And of course, career had more walks than strikeouts. His best year was 71 when he got to play a lot. And the number at the top really just probably was driving him to be the best. He had a 422 on base percentage as a pinch hitter. And when you multiply that by 1.8 and then adding his slugging, he had pretty good power. That's really what made him the best pinch hitter. And like I found baseball cards of him from every team he played for. So there it is. You now know who baseball's best pitch hitter is. I have no questions.
It's really interesting because I did take a deep dive into pinch hitters before as well. I was looking at a lot of the stuff you were looking at, and I kind of the way it started was the premise: why are these nobody really players eking out, pension careers. They're getting beyond the 10-year mark. They're getting beyond the, 12, 14 years. And this guy, you look at the back of the baseball card, you're like, what is going on? And you start to realize, okay, he made a career as a pinch hitter. But then I found out of your book, what is the percentage of them that are lefty batters? It's overwhelming. It's got.
I would have to look, but yeah, lefties generally.
It's like 75, 80% of the best pinch hitters are lefty hitters.
Because there's something about their pitchers.
Because when you look at the closers, 90 to 95% of all your relief pitchers are right-handed. Every team is looking for an above-average lefty hitter who consistently performs, not 300 level, but better than 250 and 275. So you can survive and make it to pension if you're an above-average lefty hitter and you can perform in a pressure situation.
And he became a great hitting coach. He was Tony Gwynn's hitting coach for 4 of the years when Gwynn led the league, National League hitting.
Yeah.
With Padres. So he's, guys that make it like this they are the lefty rules. They're the hitter coach. They're the hitting guys. They study hitting. They know how to hit. Manny Mota. I mean, I thought he was going to be one on this list, but again, another great hitter. Lenny Harris. I mean, Lenny Harris played for years.
Yeah.
And he never got more than 300 or so plate appearances a year, but he played for a number of years beyond what you would think he would be capable of, just because of his numbers and just as a teacher hitter. So it's interesting that these guys.
Yeah, it's great. And you realize, it's just like managers they need.
Teammate. I like him. How did William McCovey end up with so many pitch hits? Yeah, that was.
Some of these guys,
Hall of Famer, right?
Well, like a white match there, later in their career, probably got a lot of pitch hits. I didn't look to see how his career moved on. Yeah, the same thing with Cy Williams. He was full-time player for 6 or 8 years there in the middle. And then as they get older, the Matt Stairs of the world, they can't play every day, but they're still good hitters. And so we end up with a guy.
I think some of it came earlier because they platooned him with Orlando Cepeda a lot. And Cepeda was the unanimous rookie of the year when he came up.
Yeah, when I look at
the rookie of the year.
Yeah, when I looked at this originally, a few years ago, I was trying to limit it to a certain number of bats over a certain number of years. Because you end up with a guy like Hank Aaron, who has a lot of pinch hit bats, but he played for 20 years, and if he got 3 or 4 pinch hits a year, well, that adds up to like quite a number of plate appearances.
That would be 60.
So,
Wow.
without really being a pinch hitter. So, yes, sir.
Dave Philly, one of the all-time great from Barrett's pick. It was one time, he said he was pinch hitter.
And 12, he had 12. Most of them.
Did he appear here?
I have to go. He's not on the list. I don't. If you're not on, this is because it's. Once you take out the people who are in the high leverage situation, now you're talking. It's a different deal. I mean, one of the guys put Cliff Johnson on his subjective list just because he had all the home runs. Well, golly, that's one pitch hitting. He said home runs. Well, that's not really the point of it.
Well, he was 8 as a pitch hitter, if I remember, Astros and the Yankees.
Yeah, I think it's one of those players that who was that other catcher they used to have it's slipped my mind. One of the backup catchers the Astros had always come in and pinch hit, and he just always got a hit, but he wasn't a very good catcher. But
Tony Eusebio.
Yes, he always got a hit.
Yeah, didn't he have that crazy hit streak of like, 20 or 30 that lasted like 4 or 5 months or something like that?
Yeah, it took forever because he wasn't a very good catcher. But
It's a pretty good catch. Right. One guy you didn't mention, I wondered if he showed up anywhere, but I was the youngster was famous as a pinch hitter was Jerry Lynch. They used to put, I think they wrote an article in the sports magazine about Lynch in the pinch. Ryan was such a. But he was Pirates and the Reds.
Remind me, I didn't bring my data with me, and I could look those names up and see where they fall in this ranking. So it's
Can you flip them back? I'd like to look at those pinch hitters, see how many more left fingers. What I said.
Oh, Mark, hello.
Mark's there. We
Hello, Mark.
don't have to look at Mark right now.
Mark is here.
Every manager's.
Way to be on time, Mark, but I know you had customers. Clients, these customers. One clients. Oh, yeah, no, he works on the, he works. Yeah.
Get on the spots, you know, that's so easy. He's in our commercial, Jim. Okay, so never does do lines. Yeah. Even though you're just.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Works. I was saying they were left-handers, Redmond and Johnson can right-handers.
Bob Serves on the list. Smith's out there on the list.
Mize was left-handed, Si Williams said was left-handed, I don't know.
Left-handed.
Still for it. Seth Smith still playing, he's. Parents didn't list. Nobody's left-handed. Or was he switch it?
Of course, now there's nothing to do with pinch hitting because there's no reason,
Yeah.
there's no pitchers that have to get their place, so it's it'll be harder for a guy to come with.
John Bannon's left-handed. Lucky Burgess was my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
He's like 5'6",
Yeah.
250 pounds. Left-handed. Read an article about him. He's retired now. I wonder what he looks like now that he's trying to get out of shape.
How can you tell if you're on 60?
Stay in shape anymore. He's been out of baseball.
Well, interesting, Eddie Balling's on number 3.
Yeah, he effective pinch hitter, yeah.
Yeah, they got it. Much more playing time, I think, it's.
Well, he was platooning a lot with Garner, so like, some of those would be,
Pinch hit for Garner.
in the middle of the game, he'd pitch it because the pitcher switched out.
He was one of our best players at age 6.
Did Jesus Lou ever show up on anything? He's
I haven't seen him.
known as top notch pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, some of these guys may have been, I used 100 as the threshold, if I'd have gone down to 75, you may have picked up a few of these other guys that, I had to cut off somewhere to make it make sense. So,
Let's be that big pitching like that, really.
That is, yeah.
That it?
we're good.
If you look at this, right.
All right, trivia time.
1 second, let me get the others.
Mark, welcome. How you doing, Mark?
House mouse.
Do I unmute? I am grateful for every healthy breath.
Mark you're also going to Minneapolis, right, Mark?
What?
You're going to Minneapolis as well, right?
I'm gonna what?
Can't hear Mike.
Going to the SABR convention?
You going to Minneapolis in August?
Oh, yes, I will be there.
Okay. All right. So we have a trivia contest from our esteemed trivia writer this month. Again, the prize is Rumor in Town. Mark, have you ever read this? Rumor in Town?
I have a copy of it, and I think I may have read it, but I can't remember right now.
Okay. Well, you can go back and watch the author for tonight. Told a great story. So the winner gets my copy of this book.
I'll
Unless
donate
you want
mine
to share
to
it,
worthy cause.
unless you want to share it with your group, maybe do this individually.
It's always a team sport.
Okay. All right. Well, somebody can have a third of the book, and some other part of your team can have a third of the book. So you can go up and read the questions if you want.
Oh, you want me to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Greg, our previous trivia winner, is going to go ahead and read the questions for you.
You need to stand where he's standing.
Stay right here. Go ahead, Greg.
In 1890, who became the first player to reach 100 career home runs?
Question number 1.
I don't think it was it.
Unless you're Mike already knows the answer to all.
Hector. They thought it was son. I like George.
Okay. Number 2.
Number 2, in 1906, this future Hall of Famer became the first St. Louis Browns player to hit 2 home runs in a game.
Babe Dahlgren. You need an answer all because you played for the Browns. It's either him-
1906.
It's either him or Altuve is the answer all. You can't go wrong putting Altuve down.
Gloria, you already got all the answers?
Pardon me?
You already got all the answers, right, Gloria?
I found one.
Number 3.
Nobody has recorded more career doubles or outfield assists than this Hall of Fame center fielder who played from 1907 to 1928. And if you haven't picked up on it yet, we're starting from way, way back, and becoming more current with every question.
Number 4.
In 1933, this American League player slugged the first home run in a Major League Baseball All-Star game. I'm gonna throw some All-Star questions in since the game's tomorrow night.
Two.
Altuve for sure.
Yeah, I changed all your answers. They were wrong. So I get them all.
Number 5. In 1946, this American League pitcher finished the season with a league-leading 36 complete games, but only had 26 wins to show for his efforts. Lance McCullers is going, what's a complete?
Number 6.
Number 6, the 1959 World Series broke a 10-year streak of a team from New York playing in the World Series. Name the 2 teams that faced off in the 1959 World Series. This is the only question with 2 answers. So if you get one of the 2 teams, you get 1 point. If you get both teams, you get 2 points.
I got that one, sure.
I'll give you a hint. The Yankees were not in that World Series.
It's a good, that was the question. That's in the question, eh?
Yeah, I'm just, that was for Patrick's benefit, okay?
Yeah.
All right, I'm trying to help him out.
I'm telling you.
Number 7, in 1962, the Colt 45s had their debut season. Despite finishing the season with 20 losses, this pitcher represented the Colt 45s of the 1962 All-Star game.
Yes.
Be a good pitcher with just 20 games, they say.
Hey, he had a great ERA.
He was from
Just
the Middle
keep
East.
throwing you out there.
Number 8, in 1971, this shortstop had 549 at-bats, but only managed 12 RBIs for the season. It was not Adam Everett.
When I first read that, I thought, I said 54 at bats and 12 RBIs. That guy's really efficient. Then I read it. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm struggling, man. What's your record?
Andy dropped out, sorry.
Number 9, due to a split season format caused by a player strike, this 1981 team earned the best regular season record, but failed to make the playoffs because they did not finish first in either half of the season.
Yes. Best chance there is.
Number 10, the Reds likely regret not protecting this minor league player in the 1992 Major League Baseball expansion draft, who was picked 8th overall by the Marlins and was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2018.
Oops. Yes. That was.
Number 11, name the Astros starting first baseman in Game 1 of the 2005 World Series.
Maybe I should have sort of that was first of all, and I was in Virginia. Where's the base? Well, say so. You know,
Number 12.
no, well.
Number 12, despite pitching for 6 different teams during this time, no pitcher threw for more innings from 2000 to 2009 than this player. First decade of the century, who threw the most innings. He was north of 180 innings every season.
6 different teams in 9 years.
10 years. Number 13, with the 24th and 25th picks from the 2009 draft, the Angels selected 2 high school outfielders. Mike Trout went 25th. Which Houston area player went 24th?
That's a good one.
I'll give you all a hint. Trout turned out to be the better player.
As long as it lasted.
But the other one had more badass.
Number 14. In 2012, this journeyman pitcher completed the only complete game of his career, which was the perfect game against the Mariners. See, I fixed my typo on this when I did it this afternoon. I needed you to add an L there to a little word series.
Man, it is the word series.
Word series?
I didn't do, yeah, even though I ran spell check, it wouldn't have picked it up. It's a proper word. That's a,
I was like, oh, well.
shows it's not AI. It was done by humans.
For sure. Last question. This popular umpire, who is said to have called a perfect game by umpire scorecards, behind the plate in Game 2 of the 2022 World Series, which was right here in Houston, has been suspended by Major League Baseball in 2024 over gambling allegations. He's my favorite umpire. I don't know about the rest of y'all.
There's all kinds of people in SABR. We take all comers, all kinds of people. We're out, big tent.
Is it true that Eric Redden's your favorite umpire?
Very great.
Yeah.
No,
No?
no,
Well, okay.
no.
He was one of the most fascinating umpires, known for his looking at 80 yards. And our buddy Joe West spoke to this group.
Does anybody need more time at this point? We ready to wrap this up?
We go for the answers. Are we ready for the answers?
Oh, yeah.
All right, question one, who had the most home runs? Who became the first player in 1890 to reach 100 career home runs? Anybody?
Right.
Cy Williams.
George Wright.
Neither are correct.
Jose Altuve.
The great Harry Stovey. Harry Stovey.
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 You know Tom White would have known that.
Tom White.
So.
Stovey.
Statutes.
Tony, this could be the subject of an email we're receiving from you tomorrow. These random emails we get from Tony. Great. Tony,
Number two, this question became a lot more interesting since I arrived at dinner. In 1906, this future Hall of Famer became the first St. Louis Browns player to hit 2 home runs in a game.
he was mentioned tonight.
Lefty Oakland.
Pretty popular guy, huh? Maybe.
Frank Baker.
Home run Baker.
Branch Rickey.
No.
Right.
Good you know that.
Good lawyer.
I was gonna name him.
Number three, career record for most doubles and outfield assists. That would be Tris Speaker.
Yes.
I guess I should have let y'all, sorry, let y'all more else.
Tris Speaker.
Number four, this American League player selected the first home run in the Major League Baseball All-Star game.
Gloria.
Bambino, that is correct.
I heard when this question was answered. I saw what you said. That's what I said, Gloria.
Number five, 1946, pitcher with 36 complete games.
Al Newhouse.
Warren
Incorrect.
Spot.
What's that?
Warren Spot.
No. Bob Feller, that is correct.
Wow.
Who?
Bob Feller.
I've heard of him.
He spoke at our meeting.
1959 World Series broke a 10-year streak of teams from New York, or a team from New York playing in it. Who are the 2 non-New York teams?
White Sox and St. Louis.
Y'all smoked that one.
So we get 2 points.
You do.
Did you say we smoked that one?
I said y'all smoked that question.
Afterward,
All of you need to be tested. All of you need to be tested.
Babe Dahlgren Award.
That was me.
All right, 1962, the Houston Colt 45's very first All-Star.
Turk Farrell.
Turk Farrell, that is correct. 1971, the original Adam Everett of the San Diego Padres with 12 RBIs and 549 at-bats.
Oh, so now it's Grant.
No.
Billy Allman.
No.
Ozzie Smith? What is those?
Roger Metzger.
Enzo Hernandez.
Well, of course.
Enzo. I'm not in the Hall of Fame.
Yet.
Not even the Hall of
Yeah,
Average or mediocre. Question 9, 1981 team that finished the season with the best record but didn't make the playoffs because they weren't a first or second half division champ.
Expo.
Incorrect.
Rich.
Cincinnati Reds is correct.
Cincinnati Reds.
That's those.
I don't think that's right.
Number 10.
Number 10, the Reds did not protect this player in the expansion draft. He turned into a future Hall of Famer. Incorrect.
Picked 8th by Marlins.
He played for a couple games for the Marlins, and in '93 they traded him to the Padres in the package for Jerry Sheffield.
Templeton. Oh.
He went on to become a Hall of Fame closer for the
Jerry
San Diego
Sheffield.
Padres.
Trevor Hoffman.
Trevor Hoff. Number 11, this is to stay in the Larry Dierker chapter, Larry Dierker Sabre chapter. You have to get this right. Who was the Astros starting first baseman in Game 1 of the 2005 World Series?
It wasn't Jeff Bagwell.
It was not Jeff Bagwell. It was not Lance Berkman.
How about Chris Carter?
Not Chris Carter.
John Singleton. Been around forever.
Babe Dahlgren.
You just got that.
2005.
Mike
Mike Lamb.
Mike Lamb.
Mike Lamb.
Long time. We forgot that World Series. That didn't work out.
Just to point out, Michael Lamb is not Astro Wall.
He's not. The pitcher that led Major League Baseball in most innings pitched from 2000 to 2009. Journeyman.
Jamie White.
Not Jamie Moore. Always a great answer.
Yeah. Mike Steen.
Not Mike Stain. This was a starting pitcher.
Wilbur Wood.
The great Levon Hernandez.
Oh, wow.
Threw at least 180 innings. I think he had a couple where he was north of 240.
I like this
Oh,
one.
he was on the Astros wish list.
Number 13. Which Houston area high school outfielder did the Angels take one pick ahead of Mike Trout?
Steve Hagan.
Nobody?
No clue.
Randall Grichuk.
Ah, okay.
He's still playing. No, he's with,
Future Blue Jays. I think we could Blue Jays.
No love for the Houston area.
no, he's with, Arizona now.
The Astros took a Houston area player with their first one,
He was
right? The catcher from San Houston,
Some Gregory Portland high school.
but he played for the Bearcats.
Yeah.
The catcher.
That's not by where you live, apparently.
Yeah.
Played on that little.
Up in the Great White
Series team, right?
West Virginia. 14. Journeyman pitcher with one complete game in his career, and it was the perfect game.
Pitch for Rice.
What's that? No.
Hummel,
Rice.
Right.
Pitch Rice. They had like 3 or 4 real good pitchers.
Not Jeff Neiman.
it's on the tip of my tongue.
Not Wade Townsend. Philip Humber. That is correct.
Humber. I was
And my favorite umpire. that
trying
is-
for Humber. I got Hummel.
Number 15. Suspended by baseball.
Just recently.
Everyone's favorite umpire.
Pat Hover.
Over. There you go.
Pat Over. And how many possible answers?
16.
16.
Who got 30?
Hard.
I have a question, point of information. If I said Hummel instead of Humber, do I get credit?
No. Yes.
16 possible answers. 10? Anybody get 10?
Come on.
Okay, Mike. I'm sorry, Mike. Did you get 15?
I got 6.
Okay. 8. 8 answers. Mark, did you get 8?
I got 5 if I can't have Humber. If I can't have Hummel for Humber, I've got 5.
Sam, did you get 8?
Oh, I got 4.
Okay.
We got 6.
6 over here. Anybody beat 6? Oh, we have a tie.
Oh,
So nobody got 7.
Tiebreaker.
We have a tiebreaker at 6.
Do I need to come up with a tiebreaker question?
No, you have to write the next quiz. And someone has to get.
Tiebreaker question. Can you think of one?
who won the 1904 World Series?
There wasn't one.
So Herb and the group over here. That's 1 against 3, isn't it? Oh, okay. All right.
Who was the winning pitcher in last year's All-Star game?
Okay. Hey, that's good. Who was the winning pitcher in last year's All-Star game?
And I'm not in history.
Robert Valdez?
Yeah, I think it was.
Who's the winner?
I think it was Babe Dahlgren.
Babe Dahlgren. Winning pitcher. It was Frommer.
Did you get that? Except one, just one, you weren't listening, how about you?
So it was Frommer. Winning pitcher 2023 All-Star game.
Well, it actually won 3-2.
Modern era.
The,
1947.
Get anything after 9.
Come on, guys.
Should've got one.
It was not from
Who was winning pitcher there?
Emilio Duvall.
Emilio. Okay. Emilio Duvall. Okay. Another
All right,
question.
you missed it, I mean, John.
that's right.
Yeah, not answering means you weren't wrong.
Can you think of another question?
There was a manager of the American League team in last year's All-Star game.
Who was the manager of the American League team in last year's All-Star game? Herb said it first. Congratulations, Herb. Your teams have won a copy of Rumor in Town. These are some of my bookmarks I've had over the years, so don't take this, a little lottery flair. Scratch it. I have an O'Reilly's receipt from 2013, so you may have that. All right. Thank you all for a great meeting tonight. Tony, yes.
I want to tell. I get asked people to burn the midnight oil in your articles.
Yes, please write an article for the newsletter.
It has to be good.
I've got 2 good.
Okay, write anything, your favorite baseball memory, why you don't think we should have trivia contest at the meeting, whatever it is. Okay, because you never win. Your favorite moment, whatever. You don't have to be a baseball historian to write an article. Trust me, I'm not one. All right?
I'm gonna write an article about Mike Land.
Hey, write an article. That's right. I don't know. Anything. Our next in-person meeting is September the 16th. September the 16th. The Astros will play the Padres that night, but it's in San Diego. September the 16th. Next month is a busy month. If you're not going to SABR 52, please try to make it to Corpus Christi so we have a good outing and show all these Hooks fans that the Larry Dierker SABR chapter can bring it to Corpus Christi for Saturday, August 31st. If you want to go, please let me know. And that's all we got. Okay, go Astros, right? See you September 16th. Bye-bye. Saturday, August 31st.